Hi everyone, I'm Rubina.
And I'm Layla.
Welcome back to our channel, Nutrition Unpacked,
where we try diets so you don't have to.
Today we're going to cure all your mental health issues. Just kidding. But we are going to talk about seasonal affective disorder.
Yes, it is that time of year again.
We're feeling it.
We're feeling it. It's the dark times, both
Yeah.
literally and mentally, figuratively. It's the dark times. Fall is among us, and then winter. And living in Canada,
not a good time.
Not a good time at all. I personally think most people are affected mentally and emotionally by the change in season.
Last winter was really, really bad. I think Toronto didn't see sunshine for 6 weeks or something. It was rough.
I do find Toronto winters especially gray, which I find extra just
looking out, it's just gray buildings, gray roads, gray sky, and it's
gray
just
slushy nastiness that you step in.
It's just gray.
Gray. This general feeling of winter bleh, I think is quite common, but for some people, this change of season is not just met with a slight change in mood or a slight meh feeling. It actually can lead to something known as seasonal affective disorder.
Seasonal affective disorder is much more severe than just the typical winter blues. It is a type of depression that occurs on a recurring basis. Typically for most people it occurs in the fall and winter months, and that has to do with just the changes and reduction in exposure to natural sunlight.
We talked about how a lot of people kind of see a change in mood as the winter comes, but I was actually surprised by how small the prevalence of seasonal affective disorder is. In Canada, it's only about 2 to 3% of the population, which I know is quite a bit, 2 to 3 out of 100 people are experiencing this, but I actually thought it would be a lot greater. There's about 15 or so percent of the population that experience changes in their mood that isn't as severe that we can consider a depression, where it's not really getting in the way of their day-to-day activities. But honestly, it seems really low to me.
I think it's because seasonal affective disorder is a subset of depression that's in the diagnostic manual of mental health conditions, which is ultimate reference tool for mental health conditions. I think there is a diagnostic process involved, so it's possible that maybe just not, I'm guessing that not everyone is actually getting the testing done or getting the diagnoses to maybe fall under the 2 to 3%. I wonder if this is one of those things where as time progresses, maybe rates will go up just because more and more people are getting diagnosed.
I think that's probably it. That is probably it.
So there are certain symptoms that you could look out for yourself. Feeling sad or having depressed mood, maybe losing interest in things or activities that you used to enjoy, maybe changes in your eating patterns, particularly if you're finding yourself eating more or being more drawn to carbohydrate-rich foods, changes in your sleeping patterns, more likely maybe sleeping more than you used to, an increase in what's called purposeless physical activity. So that could be things like fidgeting or just not being able to sit still, maybe feeling worthless, maybe feeling guilty or not being able to concentrate or function or make decisions, and even thoughts of death or suicide.
If any of these things sound like you, definitely go see a mental health practitioner, go see your doctor. You get tied up with oh, it's winter time, I just feel sad. But if it's getting in the way of your life, if you're having some of these more severe symptoms, definitely get help for it. There is kind of a group of people who are more susceptible to this. So typically people who are in between the ages of 18 to 30, we see that's when the disease onset starts. And also women are actually more likely to have seasonal affective disorder than men, which is interesting because I also do wonder if that's a factor of men don't get mental health help when they need it. Probably, yeah.
That's just based on speculation.
That's not based on speculation, based off of the other data that we know about.
Yeah.
But we're also talking about risk factors, things like living at high latitudes. So us up in Canada where, the change in light that accompanies winter is very extreme. I know there's certain times of the year where you wake up and it's dark, you come home from work, it's dark. People who live at these latitudes where they have very extreme changes in daylight are at higher risk. Anyone who has a history of mood disorders or other mental health conditions, or also a family history of mood disorders, people who have sleep issues.
So what is it about fall and winter that messes with our entire system? It's kind of strange, right, that our bodies could somehow be tied to the weather. But really it's actually thought that it might be, like you said, the changes in light that are kind of causing these physiological changes. I think sometimes as humans we like to think that we're separate from nature, but really there are a lot of biological biological processes that are intertwined with, you know, the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun and like times of the year, especially in places like Canada where the seasons are quite distinct and different, that can lead to changes in how our bodies are functioning, even when it comes to specific neurotransmitters that have been tied to mood, like serotonin and dopamine.
And also we have a very important hormone known as melatonin, and you might know this from like the little supplements that you might take if you're having issues sleeping. And melatonin plays a really important role in kind of maintaining our sleep cycle. The light signals that we get influences like how much melatonin we make, when we make it. And so the thought is that when we see changes in daylight, it kind of throws off their whole system of melatonin, and that contributes to the development of seasonal affective disorder.
Now, we're dietitians. Why the heck
are we talking about this?
Why are we talking about this? Like, we're just out here talking about sunlight and being sad. The reason we're talking about this is because, believe it or not, the food that we eat can play a really, really big role in our mental health. Believe it or not. Ripley's.
Believe it or not. Yeah, I think people like, you know, we think a lot of time diet and we think, oh, like that helps with like not developing cardiovascular disease or cancer, whatever. But what we eat actually does play a significant role in our mental health. And I think we're seeing more and more data that's coming out supporting that. And we can see this in our observational data where more Western dietary patterns or dietary patterns that include more ultra processed foods are associated with higher depressive symptoms, higher risk of depression, higher symptoms of anxiety. And then we also see conversely diets that are high in fruits and vegetables that have higher diet quality scores, diets that are closer to the Mediterranean diet are associated with better mental health outcomes, lower risk of depression among populations who eat that. It's interesting to see that there definitely is some kind of interplay there. Anytime you are talking about observational data, you know, there are a lot of caveats, and I think this one is one where it's like, oh, little red flags of like, okay, well maybe people are eating bad because they feel bad because they have mental health problems. So it's kind of hard to know what came first, the chicken or the egg.
The research is definitely like not robust enough yet, but there are some possible mechanisms that might be at play. Diets that are really high in ultra processed foods tend to be higher in sugar and saturated fats and sodium and everything, while also being low in fibers and polyphenols and omega-3s and stuff. That could possibly lead to certain pathways of, you know, maybe higher oxidative stress, maybe more inflammation, maybe even changes to the gut microbiome that could possibly lead to this outcome of compromised mental health. There's a lot of great hypotheses out there, some evidence to support, some evidence that aren't super concrete. So we're figuring it out. A lot of the research in this area too is kind of on maybe depression or anxiety or kind of more broader mental health conditions as a whole compared to specifically on seasonal affective disorder.
When we do look at what kind of interventions have been done for improving mental health in general, that can kind of give us an idea of what might be out there for seasonal affective disorder. So as we mentioned, like just a thought of diet helping your mental health kind of seems a little bit far-fetched for people, but this line of inquiry has been looked into by scientists, and there have been some studies that have, you know, put in actual like experiments changing people's diets or giving people different nutrition counseling to improve their diets for their effect on things like depression and anxiety. So we do know that there is some kind of causal link there. There was a systematic review that was done. That means that they looked at a bunch of different studies, and what they found was that there is some evidence to support that interventions where they recommend more fruits and vegetables and higher fiber intakes may actually improve depression and anxiety symptoms. Although a lot of the studies that are out there are just kind of so different that it's kind of hard to compare them. Generally, what we can take away from this, which is what we can take away from most of research, is that vegetables are good for you and you should eat them.
There have also been experimental trials involving the Mediterranean diet, which everyone just loves the Mediterranean diet. These have shown promises to possibly be helpful with reducing depressive symptoms as well. But again, yeah, even the Mediterranean diet, the emphasis is on a lot of like whole foods and kind of reducing your intake of processed foods, really prioritizing fruits and vegetables, lean proteins and nuts and seeds and healthy fats. I mean, I think we just keep coming back to the same thing.
Yes, we do.
Nonetheless, I will say a lot of the evidence is really preliminary, but I would say kind of in general, one of the things that come up, like when you're just like on
Google.
different websites and like blogs and stuff, there are some common themes that come up. So what we're gonna do is actually walk the walk and try to make some of these changes. And then over the course of the next 2 videos, we're gonna dive into the research and actually put these recommendations to the test. So what are these recommendations? So we looked at a few different places and we kind of consolidated some of the most common themes that were coming up in terms of how to improve mental health as a whole or how to reduce your risk for seasonal affective disorder. What we're going to do is start on a vitamin D supplement, which, you know, I should have been doing anyway, but I have not.
I have like 25 different containers because every year I buy a new one and then I forget that I have it and then I don't take it and then it's still there. So
bad.
You know what? And this is going to keep me accountable to taking my vitamin D.
Yes.
Which I think is a good thing.
We're not great dietitians.
Yeah, I know.
What do they say?
Do as I say, not as I do. Exactly.
Except for now.
Except for right now, when we're doing it. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to try to increase our intake of omega-3 rich foods, which will be interesting. I definitely have room for improvement.
I have room for improvement. I do also think like fish is really expensive, so we'll see what happens. I love fish. Yeah, maybe? Yeah, I do love fish, so I'm excited to eat more. Love it, okay.
And we're gonna try to focus on really prioritizing whole foods and minimizing processed foods, minimizing simple carbs. I think I can handle this part.
I think I can definitely handle this part. I think the simple carbs part, I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm going to say this and then I'm going to like start vlogging and I'm like, actually, no, I do eat a shit ton of simple carbs. But other than the sugar I put in my tea every morning, I don't actually think I eat that many simple carbs. I do eat white rice, but like, I'm not going to stop.
That's okay. We're all about nutrition by addition here. Yeah. Just have some salmon on the side.
Okay, all right, great.
To summarize, what we're going to do is be consistent with the vitamin D supplement. Increase our intake of omega-3 rich foods. We're going to try to limit our simple carbs, limit ultra-processed foods as a whole, make sure that the bulk of our food intake is coming from whole nutrient-dense foods like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, nuts, seeds, whole grains.
Woo!
And even going to move our bodies as well.
I'm excited. You know, this is like just general good eating practice.
This is general good
eating. And I'm excited that we're not doing like some crazy thing right now, especially right now as we're in that time. I think mentally I don't know if I could handle it, and hopefully doing these tips, this will improve the mental health.
Watch out for our next 2 videos in this series where we're actually going to kind of dive into the research to see,
is there anything behind any of these?
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss one of our videos. And follow us on our Instagram and our TikTok.
Thank you for watching.
Bye!